New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello and welcome to Global Focus Today. I am Reverend Sharri Johnson, your host, and I am delighted to welcome you today and to introduce an amazing guest. You're going to love her, Reverend Dr. Tiffani Milne. You can just call her Reverend Tiff, I think. She is a staff minister at the Global Truth Center in Los Angeles, but back in the Wild West days, there were circuit riding ministers. You know, they went from town to town to town, and she does a little bit of that too, which is kind of cool. She is a leader in the prop tech industry, a comedian, a wife, and a mother to two amazing children. Having spent many years studying improv at the Second City and as a stand-up comedian all over Los Angeles, she brings a sharp sense of humor to which I can attest, and an unwillingness to take herself or life too seriously to every class she teaches and to every talk she gives. Through her lifelong passion for spirituality, an unwavering need to question everything, and a general disdain for organized religion, Dr. Tiffani found her way to the Center for Spiritual Living Westlake Village in 2013, and she dove headfirst into all that this teaching has to offer. Though she never believed that someone with a flair for sarcasm and an irreverent take on life, such as herself, could ever be a New Thought minister, all of that changed when she met her mentor, Reverend Dr. James Milne. Through Dr. James's unfaltering support, superhuman patience, and encouragement to be unapologetically herself, Dr. Tiffani became a minister of religious science in 2020 and earned her doctorate through Emerson Theological Institute in 2022. Ever the student, she continues to expand her understanding of the science of mind through the study of quantum physics and is excited to be a New Thought leader during this time that Ernest Holmes spoke of when he said, I love this quote, "We all look forward to the day when science and religion shall walk hand in hand through the visible to the invisible." Being able to inspire others to change their own lives through this teaching is one of the greatest joys of her life. Making them laugh in the process, that's a bonus. So help me welcome Reverend Dr. Tiffani. Welcome to Global Focus Today. I'm so tickled that you could come. And the first question I want to ask you is, what's prop tech?
Prop tech is basically a fancy hyphenated word for a tech company or technology company that works in the real estate space. So I build title companies for real estate technology companies is basically what I do, but it doesn't sound as fancy as prop tech.
I'm with you. You have to have the right language because it doesn't matter what you say otherwise.
That's right.
So I'm going to, there's so much to ask you about, but I'm going to start with just some basic things like what drew you to ministry in the first place? I mean, what made a little girl who wasn't sure anybody knew anything but her want to be a minister?
I have to say, I actually did not really want to become a minister. I jokingly say I jumped into this teaching, and as soon as I think what was so amazing was when I found CSL, and I found the science of mind. I had all these ideas about God and about the way the universe worked, and I thought they were my own. I thought I made them up. And I never really identified with any organized religion, and I didn't like dogma. I certainly didn't like being told what to do in any capacity, including religion. And so when I found science of mind, I was like, oh my goodness, like I didn't even know there was a group of people that had an entire teaching around what I had already believed. And so I was pretty all in from the start. And then I dove into classes, and I kept taking classes, and I wanted to learn more and know more, and it kept speaking to me. And eventually you run out of classes to take, or you end up like, the practitioner and the ministerial track, and then ultimately doctorate. But I jokingly say, like, I just dove in and started taking classes, and then woke up one day and they started calling me Reverend Doctor, because it was never really the intention. But then, I think one of the things that I love about Dr. James is I feel like he saw it in me before I ever saw it in me. And so he allowed me to have my rebellion and to be like, sure, no problem. Why don't you just take ministerial and see how it goes? And allowed me sort of the grace to have my own pace in discovering that it was in me. And then, it was like, oh, I know you're not really interested in ministry and you're busy with work, but like, would you be willing to give a talk on a Sunday? And I was like, okay, sure. And then, oh, hey, I'm going to be in Palm Desert every other Sunday. How would you feel about presiding? And so it was so sort of, it's like the world knew I was the last to know that I was a minister, kind of a situation. I've embraced it for the most part now, because I recognize that being a minister is really more about the consciousness with which I live my life than how I use the training out in the world. And that's what was always interesting to me. It's how I ended up a minister in the first place. And so the action of being a minister is more about how can I give back in some way the gifts that this teaching has given me, and how do I show up in my life every day as a minister, more so than any sort of prestige that goes along with the Reverend Doctor title.
So what you're telling me is that you were already a minister, and Dr. James saw that and just helped you figure it out for yourself.
That's a very nice way. There was some kicking and screaming along the way. I'm not gonna lie.
I believe it. Been there, done it. I know how it happens. Yep. So what is it that you like most about being Reverend Dr. Tiffani?
I mean, I think honestly, the thing that I love the most is again the way that my life has changed, and the way that I'm able to sort of you have the opportunity through this teaching to look at the world in a completely different way, and to look at situations in a completely different way. And so the ability that it affords me to stop. I was somebody who was I had a very strong sense of justice, which is really a fancy way of saying I was very judgmental. I really assigned good and bad to everything. This is a good person, that's a bad person. This experience is a good experience, that experience is a bad experience. And I think that what happens from the work that we do and the studies that we do, and being a minister, or even being in the science of mind, is you start to recognize that there's good in everything. It's what is the consciousness that I'm approaching life with, and each experience with. And so I think that it's a real opportunity to be able to just show up differently in the world, and to give that to my children. I love being on the stage at the Global Truth Center. I love teaching classes. I love being able to sort of take the science of mind and use it in a more everyday practical approach. I think my generation, and certainly the generations that have followed my generation, There's a reason why people are leaving organized religion at a rapid rate. And I think there's a, the world is complicated and challenging in a lot of ways. And I feel like it's not that people don't want spirituality. It's not that people have lost faith in something bigger than themselves. It's that they want it to apply to real world. They want it to be able to answer questions that they have today. And they don't want to be told, they're not willing to subscribe to any sort of hypocrisy or dogma or told how they need to live their lives or what they need to do. And so to be able to be a voice to fill that void is at least what my hope, is the difference that I'm making in the world as a minister. Does that answer your question?
In many traditional paths, the Sunday service is sort of like the appetizer for the week, and then you go away. But in New Thought and in Science of Mind especially, it seems to me that what you get is meat and potatoes, and then you go home and chew on it for the rest of the week and come back in time to get the next course. So I can understand completely why that would appeal to you. What's your favorite class to teach?
My favorite class to teach is actually the year one, class one introductory class. Being able to take this teaching, the sort of freshness of it, and to just inspire people to want to learn more. That you don't have to understand every concept of this teaching or to be, that you can be brand new with fresh eyes and just dive into the experiential and the experience of it. That first glimmer of hope that your life can change. I always say that the magic happens in the classroom. Sunday services are meant to, for me, inspire first and foremost, but it inspires hope. It inspires, the possibility that, and that sense of like, yeah, I am this great, amazing person, right? And then so often we leave Sundays feeling so great, and by Tuesday we're flipping people off on the freeway who cut us off, right? Like there's that, like, it's sort of it wavers or it washes away. And the classroom is where you really get to dive into your beliefs. You really get to look at what's underneath all that, what's driving what's powering my belief boat, what am I creating my life with? And so I've always, that's kind of my mantra. The classroom is where the magic happens, and getting to start off that journey on that year one, class one, is definitely my favorite, for sure.
Well, I have always said, and I taught college for 35 years, so I've said this for a very long time, there is no charge in the world like seeing the light go on over somebody's head and knowing you pulled the string.
Yep.
And in that particular class, in the Science of Mind 101, that's going to have the lights come on like blinders, just like fireworks. So I can understand that makes sense.
I think it's the same thing. Oh, I was just going to say, I think it's the same thing during practitioner training, that year one of practitioner training, which is how life got to be this way, where you really just get to, like, I just love plucking up beliefs inside of myself and figuring out what they are, where they came from, and whether or not they're serving me. And so I think that's the year where you really get to see lives change, and that real, true transformation happen. So I would say those are the magic classes, if you ask me.
All right. So tell me about your outreach work. What kinds of things do you do for outreach that make your heart sing?
One of the things that I'm really passionate about is taking spiritual principles into the corporate world in a more secular way. Obviously, I'm a business person. I lead my organization and work in the startup world, but in the corporate world. And I think there's a real recognition that within me that when we're living this teaching in all of our lives, we have in every aspect of our lives. I was very compartmentalized before there was sort of this integration that happened that I actually think for me was a byproduct of becoming a minister. But I was, a comedian, and that was a very, one aspect of me that didn't bleed over into my other areas. And I was a business person, and none of the other areas of my life bled into that. And I was a mom, and I was a wife, and all of these things I would have never told anybody, in my work life, that I was a minister. And so it was all very separate. And I think what I've realized is, while I would never say the word God or mention spiritual principles, that by showing up as an embodiment of this teaching as a leader at work, I'm impacting the way corporations think. I'm impacting this idea of, or the concepts in science of mind. I'm bringing them into the corporate world. And so recognizing the success that I've had and attributing it to the science of mind, and my leadership, I think is probably the biggest impact I think I can have on a daily basis, which is certainly not done on a Sunday. So I think that's, yeah. And, raising two humans who are, of a generation that I profoundly believe that's the generation that's going to change this world. I look at them and their peers and what young people, the consciousness of young people today, and I am blown away. My son, I know that having a mom as a minister is, especially when you go to the center on a Sunday, can be a little, I don't think, it's not always fun being the kid of a minister. You have to be on your best behavior when people know your mom's a minister. And so at one point, my son declared that he was an atheist, and that he, wasn't sure he believed in anything. And I really looked at that. And in one of my classes, we read a book by Sasha Sagan, who is the daughter of Carl Sagan, the famous scientist. And they were taught that she is a devout atheist, but she was talking about tradition and spirituality, really the awe that you get when looking at the cosmos and all of those things. And I read that book in my advanced consciousness class for my doctorate. And when I read it, and my son declared that he was an atheist, I was like, you know what? I think I am too. And that's okay. That there's, at Global Truth Center, one of the things that Dr. James has gotten really clear on is when there's no duality and we say that God is everything, and that there is sort of no spot where God is not, that includes us, and recognizing that there's no man in the sky granting wishes, that and we're creating our own lives. What we're really saying is, I am God. And it's not a far leap to say, well, if I'm saying I am God and you're saying, and an atheist is saying there is no God, if there's no God outside of myself, we're really saying the same thing. Yep. So I don't know if that made it complicated, but
that's wonderful. I love hearing young people talk from their truth. Because when he said, I'm an atheist and I don't know that I believe in anything, what he was really saying is, I figured out that I don't know and I want to know. And that they're not, I agree with you about that generation. They're not afraid of having somebody think what they think is not appropriate. And that lack of fear, that adventurous attitude, that is what's going to make a difference in the world.
Well, and they're not willing to be put in a box. Everything, I've always looked at religion, the different various organized religion, it's just, they all share the same golden threads of truth, that, love is at the center of all of it. And yet it's like, pick your box. Do you want the Judaism box and the dogma that goes along with that? Or do you want the Christianity box? We've got, all these different boxes that it comes in that are really designed for people to be able to find their own path, to find their own truth. And I think I look at these younger generations, they're just not willing to be defined or put in any box. And that's where everything becomes infinitely possible. Like, that's the place when, when we're not fixed on how things are supposed to be, or who I am, or who you are, or what God is, that's when we can change the world, because anything becomes possible. And so it's my greatest honor, honestly, is being able to raise these two children that are outside of the box thinkers, that are really empowered and powerful. I mean, I feel more like I learn more from them on any given day most of the time than I'm part of teaching them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The thing to remember in that particular situation is that learning is not a one-way thing.
Yeah.
It's reciprocal, or it doesn't exist.
Yep.
And that's what is changing things in the world now, is that these kids understand that learning is reciprocal, and they're willing to do their part, but they want the backpack too. They want the whole, give me the whole show, or go away, and that's what we need. That is, I loved your quote about science, because my belief has always been that science and spirituality started out like this. And then, probably about the time of the Reformation, it went like this, and then it went like this, and then it went like this, and now it's going like this again. That's what I love about quantum physics. Quantum physics is it's just Christianity with God. I mean, just science with spirituality in it. That's all it is, and it works because it's real. It's truth, and who cares what you call it if it's truth?
Yeah, I think for me, being able to explain this teaching where you can take anything polarizing out of it. The word God is very polarizing.
Oh, yeah.
When we say, divine, or we speak about, like, there's so many of these sort of religious buzzwords that we use. And the idea that that we can speak this teaching, because there's the core tenets of it are right in line with, with quantum physics and what Jesus said. It's done unto
Absolutely.
you.
It's like all the same truth.
The marrying of that, but being able to speak it in a way that doesn't turn people off. Because I know for me, quite honestly, I grew up Jewish by tradition. I say I'm Jewish, the concept, talking about, Jesus was not a word you said in our house. And Christianity, there was definitely a sort of an understanding or a feeling of separation. There was us and them in terms of Christianity and Judaism. And I think for me, it's a large reason why I just bucked. I wanted nothing to do with any organized religion at all. I was very anti-religion. I love that there's a world where we can speak about the truth, and not have to bring any of those polarizing concepts into it. Yep. I can speak about this teaching, and I can talk about truth and what I know, and never have to say the word God. And I feel like quantum physics is what's sort of given us that ability, when I can talk about the quantum fields, or everything is energy. I remember when my dad died a few years ago, there was, in Science of Mind, we talk about death as, that life is eternal, and that death is a transition. It's a transition from this form to whatever's next. And I understood it until my dad died. And then the word transition made my blood boil. And I really felt like everybody kept telling me that life is eternal, but I felt like he was gone, and I was upset and I was angry. And suddenly, for the first time, the things that I had learned in Science of Mind did not bring me comfort. It actually made me angry, and really forced me to look at the fact that, like, as much as I want to say that I know what happens and that life is eternal, we don't know. We don't know what that transition is, if we're really honest. We don't
we
know
know
what
that
happens
it's a
after that.
transition, but we can't explain what happens in the transition.
But science, the laws of thermodynamics say that energy cannot be created or destroyed. And that I could hold on to. That I could say, I understand that everything is energy, that I'm energy, that my dad is energy. And that while on this plane, on this existence, of my ability to tangibly touch the matter that is him has obviously changed. The fact that his energy could never be destroyed enabled me to understand the very same concept, life is eternal, that it's a transition to something else, right? That's what we teach. But I was able to grab onto science. It was science backed, and helped me towards that healing process. And so I want to be that in the world. I want to be somebody who can say, that you don't have to be religious, that it's okay to not believe in a God outside of yourself, that you don't have to buy in to what we teach because it's what we say it is, but to be able to know it and really believe it, and to bridge the gap between the people who are leaving religion in droves but still have that desire inside of them. You can be an atheist or an agnostic and still have that awe feeling when you look up at a starry night, or that feeling of connectivity, or that feeling of oneness. And I'd like to be a place where those people can go.
Excellent. Thank you. So that's the most perfect segue for my next question, because my next question is, 10 years from now, supposing that everything happens exactly the way you would like it to happen, what would your ministry look like?
I think that my ministry would look like speaking to, I think that my ministry would look like still be the same, of bridging the gap between people who don't want organized religion and that quest for spirituality, and being a voice out in the world for the majority. By the way, that's the majority, that's not the minority. The minorities are the ones that are showing up for church every Sunday. And so I don't know that it looks like having a church or a center in any capacity, but I do know that I want to be a voice for that in the world. Really, I just want to be a minister that I would want to go see. I want to, you speak what appeals to you, right? And so I'd love to be able to do that in a big way, whether that's, touring the world and speaking, or having a place, a center that people can go to on a regular basis. I don't exactly, I know that if this teaching has taught me anything, it's that the how is not really my business, right? I recognize
How
the
is
energy.
Yep. That's
The how is none of my business. Yeah. But I recognize the energy that I want to be in the world. And I recognize that I want it to be in a really big way, and have a profound impact. Because I think that that's where the gap is right now. The gap in the world is being able to provide, there is faith. It does a really big service in this world, right? Faith gives us the ability to understand, to go through challenges in our life and have the resiliency and the perseverance that we need to get through them. Faith gives people even if it's faith in a God outside of yourself. I mean, there's something really comforting about the idea that there's this father figure following me around, watching my every move and taking care of me, and that my life is unfolding according to some design creation. And when you take that away and say there is no man in the sky granting wishes or watching every move, and that there is no destiny, that we're free to choose, that can be very scary. Like, what do you mean that life is unfolding according to my choices and that I have volition? And while we believe that there's a force for good in the world, and we believe in divine unfoldment, and I believe that with all my heart, I think that if you take away the man in the sky without sort of replacing it with the truth that we have everything that we need, that we live in a universe of infinite possibility, that everything is creative energy, that life is unfolding perfectly. I think that that's what's missing for the people that no longer want to, or that don't have that belief in a man in the sky. And so my ministry and what I want to continue to grow and to expand is to find a place in the world that brings that to people.
And it just so happens with my next question, I'm going to ask you about that, because what I call that is conscious evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to know is, how does your ministry, how do you as a minister, how do you as Dr. Tiffani nurture, expand, enhance conscious evolution?
Well, I think I have a commitment to my own spiritual conscious, my own conscious evolution, right? And all I do on a Sunday when I'm giving a talk or I'm in the classroom is show up as my authentic self. And a lot of times that looks like, sometimes I'm just a step or two ahead, right? I've had this experience that I don't always, my first thought, as much as I'd love to say that I walk around with the minister consciousness 100% of the time, and then I just bring this enlightenment to every experience. I have those moments of frustration too. I have those moments of like, or whatever's going on in my day. And then sometimes that second thought, then that consciousness shows up, that practitioner consciousness, that knowing a higher truth shows up. And so I think that my job really is to show up and be honest and to be authentic about that. My job is not to show up and show how perfect I am and then preach to other people how they should live their lives, or how much better their lives could be if they could just get with the program, or be as enlightened as I am. I think that showing the truth of who I am, that I'm on this journey too, that I have days where, being transparent about questioning this philosophy. When my dad died, I recognize that all adds value to my ministry. It gives me credibility that I'm a human being, or going through life and experiencing things. I remember having to give my first son after the mass shooting at a school in Texas that happened last year. It was the first time I had to get out. I was the minister on a Sunday, and I had to give up and give the inspiring talk. And I kept thinking, like, maybe Dr. James is going to call me and tell me, like, maybe this is too big for you to handle. I'm going to swoop in and take it. And he never called. He just, was like, I trust you and you've got this. And I think those are the times that being a minister is, how do you get up on a Sunday after something like that has happened, and provide inspiration to give people something to hold on to. And quite honestly, I had my own emotion about it, right? Like it was, I had to reconcile what had happened for myself too. And I got up that Sunday and I was honest about that. And I realized that I have infinitely more power living amongst everybody and then sharing how my consciousness is evolving for me than I do trying to pretend that I have it all figured out or that I've evolved beyond, to a level where of superiority in any sort of way. And I got to give a talk about, you know, identifying any areas that I still had to clean up in my own life. I'm evolving.
So, what
answer.
I'm hearing you say is that the main focus, if I'm hearing you correctly, the main focus of your ministry is experiencing and expressing oneness.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Because my next question is.
Yes.
So my next question is, how does that translate into what you personally, what your ministry, how you address, embrace, extend world peace?
That's one of the things that when I made reference to that Sunday where I had to show up, after a tragedy, and inspire. I think, first and foremost, it's cleaning up my own backyard. I don't get to say that the world should be different and that we need world peace if I'm fighting with family members, if I'm not kind to, showing up and being rude to a barista at a Starbucks or in a restaurant, like recognizing that those little things send out the ripples into the world. And it's very easy for us to all say that we should have world peace on a global scale. When we have those sort of, little things day to day where we're not being our kindest, most loving self. And you multiply that by the billions of people in the world, and you can start to see that bigger picture of how it escalates, how it's manifesting out into the world. And so I think that one thing is just making a personal commitment. Not that I'm perfect at it, but when I'm not, I clean it up. And I think that that's one big thing. And I think the other thing is that so often in the complexities of life, it's hard sometimes to look beyond yourself and your own experience. I equate oneness. This is kind of my analogy for it. It's like if you've ever been on the freeway stuck in traffic, right? And we're all, you're headed towards somewhere and you're on the freeway and everybody, it's just, you're at a dead stop, cars everywhere. And I might be in my car peacefully listening to the radio, trusting and knowing that I'm going to get there in timely fashion. I might be in my car in a rage, frustrated because I need to get to point B. And that somebody in the car next to me might be grieving the loss of a loved one and bawling their eyes out in the car. And the person, in another car might be having a fight with their partner or their spouse and angry. And we're all in our own individual little cars experiencing this, however we're experiencing it. But fundamentally, we're all on the same freeway headed in the same direction, right? And so that's sort of, to me, not only the analogy for oneness and this experience that we're having, but I can get really fixed on what's happening in my house or in my car and forget that somebody in the car next to me is having a different experience. And I also think that there's, those moments where if we all looked out beyond our own windshields, we would see maybe snow-capped mountains and the beauty of nature and the beauty of the world that how many times do we miss that when we're so fixated in sitting in our own car and looking out at the traffic on the road? And so to me, it's those moments where I look beyond the windshield and can see, or when I can look into your car and see what's going on for you, and to have love and rather than experiencing my own experience of what's happening in this traffic jam, to be able to look over and see what your experience in the traffic jam is happening. And so, does that answer the question?
So once again, what I'm hearing you say is two things. First, wake up, pay attention, be aware, stay conscious. Second, live the truth you know.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, be aware of other people. Be aware of, it's so easy to respond or react to somebody else's outward actions, right? It's so easy to, somebody cuts you off on the freeway to be like, that guy's a jerk, and get angry, or to have a reaction to their behavior. And it's kind of that back up. What if that man's wife is in labor sitting next to him and he's frantically trying to get to the hospital? What if, to really start to understand it, it's the same thing with parenting, right? Like sometimes my daughter gets hangry. I mean, hangry to a level where it's like, if she is hungry, all bets are off. And I remember when she was little and she would get hangry, and my husband would be, trying to deal with the behavior, right? Because she'd be having these meltdowns and abhorrent behavior. And she would be getting in trouble and whatever. And I would be here going, if we just give her a granola bar, this all goes away. Kind of this understanding that yes, the behavior was awful. And I did not enjoy temper tantrums in the behavior, but the understanding that it was coming from a place of being hungry. And then if I nurtured that and I focused on that rather than the behavior goes away. And I think that's true for all of us. Most of us, when we're, acting out or behaving in ways that are against our true nature, right? Because our true nature is loving. When you look at human beings, when you look at how people rally together in times of tragedy to just support one another and be together, that's the true nature of who we are.
That is so the true nature of who we are, that I'm going to give it back to you right now, because when you spoke about being on the stage the first Sunday after that school shooting, what I heard you describing was a community that was coming together in the truth that they knew. And you were the voice, but they were all with you, and it was united and it was supportive. And that's living the truth we know. It's being the truth we know. Outstanding. Yeah. So I got another question.
Okay.
Will you come back?
1,000,000%. I would love to. This has been amazing.
Hold on. I'm going to get the calendar out.
Okay. Let me pull up mine too.
People get away. Somebody says, yes, I get the calendar out.
No, I love it. This has been so, yeah. I don't often, I spent so much time in denial of being a minister and kicking and screaming that I don't often take time to really look at what my ministry is or where it could potentially go. And so I thank you for posing some of those hard questions to somebody who's gone into this thing sometimes kicking and screaming, and yet I love it so much that I think I'm pretty all in now, and I think you've helped solidify that. So thank you, Reverend Sharri.
So how does July 11th look to you?
Well, you're in luck. I can barely see a week in front of my face. So if you book it now, it's yours. What date did you say again?
July the 7th, the 11th. I'm sorry, 7/11.
The July 11th. You are on my calendar.
And you're on mine. Yippee hooray. And let me tell everyone who's here now that our guest next week is Reverend Catherine McClellan from the Center for Conscious Living. And she is a whole nother wonderful, exciting person with a whole nother wonderful, exciting ministry. So I know you had a great time today. I sure did. And I hope you'll come back and join us again next week. Thank you for coming. Bye-bye.
Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. You will do